I think I did everything, yes. So, welcome to the Anthology of Enlightenment with our special guest today, it's Mr. George Gurdjieff. And you heard music that was written by him and his friend, de Hartman. And they traveled the world and made in all the places where they came. They started to make music in the same kind of setting, in the same kind of, style, you could say, and with the same kind of rhythm as the places where they went. And that's really lovely to see that. So Alain Kremensky is one of the players, but also the Hartman family has played all of this music too. And you can check it out on YouTube, of course. So that's on the side. And to me, it's very inspirational seeing Gurdjieff at work, you could say. It's like very inspiring. I love it because I have recognition in the sense that he was also a musician. He was also teacher. He was also artist, you could say. And you see, when you read through his books, and you see that he is really in the process. He's really one who is really involved with the awakening process and looking at it. And that to me is very interesting because practical as one can be, that's a part of it and a very essential part. So he has certain, say, really outspoken ideas about this process. And so it's interesting to take a look at that today. But we also will go through a little bit of his history. And there is a meditation coming up, like a contemplation based on, his insights. And this is really sweet too. To see this. Now, where did it come from? Where is this? Because this is our first master of the Middle East. He came from Armenia. Now it happened to be that I was in Armenia in this summer, like in July I was in Armenia. So I could taste a little of that, where he comes from. And this is very interesting, and I'll come back to that later. And you see some of the, say, videos are from there, literally, live made. And yeah, the music I really love. That's why I love to be inspired by it, to try to let it come to expression through my capabilities, you could say, to do so. And that's beautiful to see that. So, in other words, it's going to be interesting in the sense that we're going to look at different aspects of one master who actually brought in a lot of idea and also a lot of weight, you could say, weight on the process. I'll be more clear about that later. So you could have listened to the podcast too. We will listen to that later. That's also an important ingredient because he's talking about the falling asleep of the human mind, like the tendency to fall asleep. And even in your awakening process, you got to be watchful for not falling asleep and adjusting to humanhood again and losing yourself in that what has no reality. So that's another part that we will certainly take a look at. Maybe I'll just start with the meditation. And this contemplation really is what it is. In this contemplation, I read from the book, Life is Real Only Then When I Am. That's the title of the booklet. And I only got a piece of that, like an excerpt out of it. But we use that in the meditation. Remember myself. Life is real only when I am. George Gurdjieff. There is no way out whatsoever. However, there is a way. There is only one exit to have outside myself, so to say, a never-sleeping regulating factor. Namely, a factor which would remind me always, in my every common state, to remember myself. But what is this? Can it really be so? A new thought. Why hitherto could there not have come to my head such a simple thought? Did I have to suffer and despair so much in order only now to think of such a possibility? Why could I not, in this instance also, look to a universal analogy? And here also is God, again God. Only He is everywhere, and with Him everything is connected. I am a man, and as such I am, in contrast to all other outer forms of animal life, created by Him in His image. For He is God, and therefore I also have within myself all the possibilities and impossibilities that He has. The difference between Him and myself must lie only in scale. For He is God of all the presence in the universe. It follows that I also have to be God of some kind of presence on my scale. He is God and I am God. Whatever possibilities He has in relation to the presences of the universe. Such possibilities and impossibilities I should also have in relation to the world, subordinate to me. He is God of all the world and also of my outer world. I am God also, although only my inner world. He is God and I am God. For all and in everything we have the same possibilities and impossibilities. Whatever is possible or impossible in the sphere of His great world should be possible or impossible in the sphere of my small world. This is as clear as that after the night must inevitably come the day, but how could I have failed to notice such a startling analogy? Thank you. So this was, the last song was a woman's prayer, also by Gurdjieff, performed by Tsadopoulos and Anja Lechner on violin, on cello. So absolutely great. So the music is so incredibly beautiful that I really love to play some of it today. So what did we see here? It's like, what is this prayer that we were, or this meditation that we underwent? So the interesting part with Gurdjieff is basically that he's from the Middle East. He was born in Armenia, close to the capital Yerevan, and maybe 50 miles from it. And what is so specific about Armenia? Armenia is a country that for 1700 years is Christian. Like in the year 300, it was founded Christian. Now that's yeah, unheard of in the region there. Like Turkey is Muslim, Iran is, well, is not Islamic, but is more like it had its own Rumi, Zarathustra, Persian mysticism, but not Christian, like using the Bible. And no. And then you have Georgia next to it, with more Orthodox Christian. And then you have Azerbaijan at the back of it. It's like, well, that's not Christian either. So here's one place that's very interesting. So it's like on the video you saw this mountain, this beautiful mountain, the Ararat. It's in Turkey actually, but it's close enough to the border to make a picture like this. I didn't make it though. But anyway, so I saw the mountain. Ararat, you see it in the Bible, is the place where supposedly the Ark of Noah was stranded. Like it was the highest peak in the area. It's 5,000 meters high, something like this. So that's where life started again. Now, this church that you saw where the birds were flying to is founded also 1700 years ago. It's like it is, the fundamentals of it are 1700 years old. It really started there, the Christian, it's on like a peninsula. It's 1700 years old. That's kind of interesting. So anyway, that, yeah, now we understand why Gurdjieff has a Christian background. Everyone in Armenia has, like most of the people that are living there, have still a Christian background. And that makes, Gurdjieff was very open for other religions and other ways of thinking and doing. And music, of course, too. So the cultural aspect was there too. So I'm going to read more about it from Wikipedia, but this was what I'd love to share just for a moment to give some context in where does Gurdjieff come from. Like, this is George, and this is the Wikipedia. So I'm reading this to you to place them in a timeline and all these things. So, oops, George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, saying from 1867 to 29th of October 1949, was a philosopher, mystic, spiritual teacher, composer, and dance teacher. Gurdjieff taught that people are not conscious of themselves and thus live their lives in state of an hypnotic waking sleep, but that it is possible to awaken to a higher state of consciousness and serve our purpose as human beings. The practice of his teaching has become known as the work, connoting work on oneself, and is additional to the ways of the fakirs, Sufis, monks, the way of the monks and the way of the yogis. So that his student Ouspensky referred to it as the fourth way. Gurdjieff's teaching has inspired the formation of many groups around the world. After his death in 1949, the Gurdjieff Foundation in Paris was established and led by close pupil Jean de Salzman, and in cooperation with other direct pupils of Gurdjieff, until her death, and the son did the next 10 years, 11 years. So the International Association of the Gurdjieff Foundation comprises the Institute Gurdjieff in France, Gurdjieff Foundation in the USA, and the Gurdjieff Society in the UK and in Venezuela. Okay, so that is a little bit of his background. So coming back to that, philosopher, mystic, spiritual teacher, composer, and dance teacher. So he created quite a bit of dances, but the dances had a very specific purpose. In fact, we have to listen to the tape first. Then you understand more about what he actually has as a purpose with his ways of doing, with his practice. Because otherwise you think like, why would you do that? Now he was like this. He thought like this. Like, even when you have had a spiritual awakening moment, you can fall back asleep. So it's like the tendency of the human mind to fall asleep is like inherent in human thinking. It wants to get comfortable in the dream. It wants to adapt itself to the dream, to human living. You recognize that tendency in yourself too. It's like continuously you have to be alert. You have to learn to be alert, not fall into rituals, not falling into repetitions. Like repetitions are deadly in that sense. Habits are deadly. No, throw them around. Don't do things the same way. Don't meditate always in the same chair. Don't meditate always in the same room. No, look for different places to do it. It's like that will, dislodge your meditation practice and, prevent you from falling asleep in doing so. So even in your awakening process, you have to be very much aware of it, very much alert. And he said, like, the real changes occur when there suddenly is a shock. And so in his teaching you see that in his practical awakening teaching, you could say, he uses a lot of practical exercises, doing really difficult things with your hands in a dance, not just dancing, no, doing the dance in a certain way, in a certain rhythm, with opposite movements and all this, like, so that you stay alert in what you are doing, even physically. And the connection between body and mind becomes like really, really important. So he uses a lot of that, and which is really great. It's like he uses a lot of that in his teaching. Like, it's about your experience. So you don't want to go into creating an understanding before the experience. No, you want first the experience, then all the rest will come. Like, this is the same as what we recognized in Yogananda's teaching. It's like, no, first the experience, then the understanding, the knowing will come. But you gotta go for the experience first. First you want to experience God. Then all the rest will follow. Seek first the kingdom. Joel would teach the same. Like, look for the kingdom first. Seek first the kingdom. And everything else will be added unto it. So this is good. And he practiced that too, in keeping it really, in fact, very physical still. Like that's where most of it happens, in physical activity, and slowly moving to and change in the whole mindset, and see that everything changes with that. So that is really interesting. So we're going to listen to a part of the talk, probably around 10 minutes, and just to come into the way that he shares. And we use that today, just to take a look at this way. It's like, let it freshen up your idea about a transformational path. In Search of the Miraculous by Uspensky, about the teachings of Gurdjieff. Chapter 11. I am often asked questions in connection with various texts, parables and so on from the Gospels, said Gurdjieff on one occasion. In my opinion, the time has not yet come for us to speak about the Gospels. This requires much more knowledge. But from time to time we will take certain Gospel texts as points of departure for our discussions. This will teach you to treat them in the right way, and above all to realize that in the text known to us, the most essential points are usually missing. To begin with, let us take the well-known text about the seed, which must die in order to be born. Except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone, but if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. This text has many different meanings, and we shall often return to it. But first of all, it is necessary to know the principle contained in this text in its full measure as applied to man. There's a book of aphorisms which has never been published and probably never will be published. I've mentioned this book before in connection with the question of the meaning of knowledge, and I quoted then one aphorism from this book. In relation to what we are speaking of now, this book says the following: a man may be born, but in order to be born he must first die, and in order to die he must first awake. In another place it says, when a man awakes he can die, and when he dies he can be born. We must find out what this means. To awake, to die, to be born. These are three successive stages. If you study the Gospels attentively, you will see that references are often made to the possibility of being born. Several references are made to the necessity of dying, and there are very many references of the necessity of awakening. Watch, for ye know not the day and hour, and so on. But these three possibilities of man, to awake or not to sleep, to die and to be born, are not set down in connection with one another. Nevertheless, this is the whole point. If a man dies without having awakened, he cannot be born. If a man is born without having died, he may become an immortal thing. Thus the fact that he has not died prevents a man from being born. The fact of his not having awakened prevents him from dying. And should he be born without having died, he is preventing from being. We have already spoken enough about the meaning of being born. This relates to the beginning of a new growth of essence, the beginning of the formation of individuality, the beginning of the appearance of one indivisible I. But in order to be able to attain this, or at least begin to attain it, a man must die, that is, he must free himself from 1,000 petty attachments and identifications which holds him in the position in which he is. He is attached to everything in his life, attached to his imagination, attached to his stupidity, attached even to his sufferings, possibly to his sufferings more than anything else. He must free himself from his attachments. Attachment to things, identification with things, keep alive 1,000 useless eyes in a man. These eyes must die in order that a big eye may be born. But how can they be made to die? They do not want to die. It is at this point that the possibility of awakening comes to the rescue. To awaken means to realize one's nothingness. That is, to realize one's complete and absolute mechanicalness and one's complete and absolute helplessness. And it is not sufficient to realize it philosophically in words. It is necessary to realize it in clear, simple and concrete facts, in one's own facts. When a man begins to know himself a little, he will see in himself many things that are bound to horrify him. So long as man is not horrified at himself, he knows nothing about himself. A man has seen in himself something that horrifies him. He decides to throw it off, to stop it, put an end to it. But however many efforts he makes, he feels that he cannot do this, and that everything remains as it was. Here he will begin to see his impotence, his helplessness, his nothingness. Or again, when he begins to know himself, a man sees that he has nothing that is his own. That is, that all that he has regarded as his own, his views, thoughts, convictions, tastes, habits, even faults and vices, all these are not his own, but have been either formed through imitation or borrowed from somewhere ready-made. In feeling this, a man may feel his nothingness. And in feeling his nothingness, a man should see himself as he really is, not for a second, not for a moment, but constantly, never forgetting it. This continual consciousness of his nothingness and of his helplessness will eventually give a man the courage to die, that is, to die not merely mentally or in his consciousness, but to die in fact, and to renounce actually and forever those aspects of himself which are either unnecessary from the point of view of his inner growth or which hinder it. These aspects are first of all his false I, and then all the fantastic ideas about his individuality, will, consciousness, capacity to do, his powers, initiative, determination, and so on. But in order to see a thing always, one must first of all see it, even if only for a second. All new powers and capacities of realization come always in one and the same way. At first they appear in the form of flashes at rare and short moments. Afterwards they appear more often and last longer, until finally, after very long work, they become permanent. The same thing applies to awakening. It is impossible to awaken completely all at once. One must first begin to awaken for short moments. But one must die all at once and forever, after having made a certain effort, having surmounted a certain obstacle, having taken a certain decision from which there is no going back. This would be difficult, even impossible for a man, were it not for the slow and gradual awakening which precedes it. But there are 1,000 things which prevent a man from awakening, which keep him in the power of his dreams, in order to act consciously with the intention of awakening. It is necessary to know the nature of the forces which keep man in a state of sleep. First of all, it must be realized that the sleep in which man exists is not normal, but hypnotic sleep. Man is hypnotized, and this hypnotic state is continually maintained and strengthened in him. One would think that there are forces for whom it is useful and profitable to keep man in a hypnotic state and prevent him from seeing the truth and understanding his position. There is an Eastern tale which speaks about a very rich magician who had a great many sheep. But at the same time, this magician was very mean. He did not want to hire shepherds, nor did he want to erect a fence about the pasture where his sheep were grazing. The sheep consequently often wandered into the forest, fell into the ravines, and so on. And above all, they ran away, for they knew that the magician wanted their flesh and skins, and this they did not like. At last the magician found a remedy. He hypnotized his sheep and suggested to them first of all that they were immortal and that no harm was being done to them when they were skinned, that on the contrary it would be very good for them and even pleasant. Secondly, he suggested that the magician was a good master who loved his flock so much that he was ready to do anything in the world for them. And in the third place, he suggested to them that if anything at all were going to happen to them, it was not going to happen just then, at any rate not that day, and therefore they had no need to think about it. Further, the magician suggested to his sheep that they were not sheep at all. To some of them he suggested that they were lions, to others that they were eagles, and to others that they were men, and to others that they were magicians. And after all this, his cares and worries about the sheep came to an end. They never ran away again, but quietly waited the time when the magician would require their flesh and skins. This is a very good illustration of man's position. So, being hypnotized. So there's a lot of similarity in what we hear and what we train and what we read and the tale that has just been told, or the practice of Gurdjieff, you could say. There's a lot of similarity. And so there's a continual training. It's like we use the mind training or practicing the presence or whatever your practice is. It's like you use that to return back to the awakening continuously, not being distracted, seeing the thoughts as meaningless instead of doing something with them. So that is pretty amazing in the way that he brings forth that, and I like the way he exposed that too. It's like it's practical. This is actually about not running too fast, but to slow down and actually enter into the process, like letting this be your experience, not running further with beautiful concepts. No, first integrate some of it. It's like, no, this is first your experience, not doing difficult things or anything, but more like stay with where you are and what you can receive in this moment, and see how that develops. Like that will guide you further. So this is lovely. So we see this too in the expressions that I found in the book. I think it's the fourth way that I used, In Search of the Miraculous by Uspensky, who was his student. He made a lot of notes and put it together in a book. So man is a machine. All his deeds, actions, words, thoughts, feelings, convictions, opinions, and habits are the result of external influences, external impressions. Out of himself, a man cannot produce a single thought, a single action. Everything he says, does, thinks, feels, all this happens. Man cannot discover anything, invent anything. It all happens, like it's a repetition. It's just a bunch of memories repeating itself. And yeah, so that's the human mind. It's like the human concepts, the human frame of reference is not creative. Like it is within itself. It cannot come with anything new. It cannot invent. It's not creative. So this is really wonderful. So man is a machine. It's like the same as what Sri Aurobindo would share, the circling tracks of mind, you know. It's like you think that you need to do it this way. You think that you need to behave like a human being. You think that you're born and that you're going to die, that you prevent yourself from dying, and you defend yourself and you try to survive, and you stay in that loop. Like there's a loop. There's no creativity in it. It is already what death is. Balancing the good and the bad, balancing the progress and say that what is not progress. So it's like looking for the balance in your human life is really what death is, because there's no way of getting comfortable in the dream in that sense. In the human dream there's no comfort. That is made to distract, to take you out of your true self, or your authenticity, or your... Yeah, it's the same with the sheep. Some sheep thought that they were eagles, or that they were humans. He just hypnotized them into it. It's like that's the same with us. It's like we think we're kings, we think we're CEOs, we think we're presidents, we think we're Olympian champions, we think that we're this and that, and we have our privileges and our all the things that come to us to establish our identification. Like none of this is so. It's you being hypnotized and behaving like a human being and thinking that you have to do that and keep doing what you're doing. Not so. So here's the awakening. You discover it doesn't need to be that way. Here's your awakening. But then it's like, okay, so what then? What then? Now, you cannot think outside the constriction that you are perceiving. Now, how is that ever going to work? Not by your doing, obviously, because you don't know. You just do something. As a human being, you just do something. You have no idea, but you don't know that you don't have any idea. So the next step is then to die in it. Like, to die in your humanhood, to see, I'm totally helpless here. Whatever I make up, whatever I come up with, is never a solution. It only binds me further to a place that has in fact no reality. I saw that a moment ago. So it's like after your awakening flash or glimpse, you don't know what to do. You enter into deep hopelessness. Now, speaking from my own experience, within probably 3 months after my, say, intense awakening experience, I got straight into a depression that was so impossible, because now what am I supposed to do? I cannot be a human being. I cannot be this. I only know how to do that. Now what am I going to do? What is the solution to that? So you literally die into that. You die in that. And then something can happen. Yeah? Suddenly you see like, oh, in my say defenselessness is my safety. It is not the end of the story. No, this dying was really essential in order for me to come to life, and seeing that I don't have to know anything, and that I receive guidance whenever I am open to receive it. Whenever I need it, I can say. If I stay with my practice and stay stay alert in my awakening, then that can come to me. I stay present, I stay in contact with spirit. Now that can come to me, you know. So this is really beautiful. So this sequence of to awake first, to die, and to be born. That's really the sequence. So to stabilize this fact for oneself, to understand it, to be convinced of its truth, means getting rid of 1,000 illusions about man, about his being creative and consciously organizing his own life and thoughts, and so on and so on. There is nothing of this kind. Everything happens. Popular movements, wars, revolutions, changes of government, all this happens. And it happens in exactly the same way as everything happens in the life of individual man. Man is born, lives, dies, builds houses, writes books, not as he wants to, but as it happens. Everything happens. Man does not love, hate, desire. All this just happens. It happens. It's like it's a perpetual, self-perpetuating principle. And the only way is to get out of that. But you as you know yourself, cannot get out of it. So the methods that Gurdjieff uses, the work, is not an intellectual pursuit. And neither is it a new concept, but rather it is a practical way of living in the moment, so as to allow consciousness of oneself, self-remembering, to appear. Gurdjieff used a number of methods and materials to wake up his followers, which apart from his own living experience included meetings, music, movements, sacred dance, writings, literature, of lectures, and innovative forms of group and individual work. The purpose of these various methods was to put a spanner in the works, so as to permit a connection to be made between mind and body, which is easily talked about, but which has to be experienced to understand what it means. Since each individual is different, Gurdjieff did not have a one-size-fits-all approach and employed different means to impart what he himself had discovered. So this part is then the method. Of course, there is not really a method. If it's completely individualized, you cannot speak of a method. Like, no, it will work for everyone different. There's an individual way of doing this. But he says, like, you come into the presence to remember yourself. And also this connection with the body and the mind. Like, it is a physical experience, in other words. Like, you cannot avoid including the body in the awakening and also in the being born again. It is a physical experience, but very individual. There's not a one-size-fits-all. And we know this. It's like this, the same, in fact, still the same with the Course in Miracles, if you want to compare it with that. It's like the Course in Miracles will have an exercise every day, but that's not the method where it works with. Like, there's no method connected to it. Now, the thing that happens with the lessons, for instance, is that you make contact yourself. Like, you do your exercise in this specific way given, but you do it in your way, the way that comes to you. In fact, you are going to make contact with you, and the release of that is given, or the release of you can say, like, it is what happens to you in the process that determines how quick it will go, or what is happening. Like, it's still completely individualized. For some it may be so easy to go through the first 50 lessons, like, oh yeah, absolutely. And for some it might be very difficult just to do it like that. Like, I can't get over lesson 5, or I'm upset about something that I'm never upset for the reason that I think. Like, that is so upsetting to me. I don't know how to do this. So it's like you have your own, in the process, you have your own, say, field in which something really starts to resonate, where you really feel the pain, or where you really feel so helpless that you don't know what to do with yourself. Well, this is great. This is really where this is for. It's like you enter into your despair, not to sink into it, but to actually move through it, to give yourself the possibility to die in it, in any kind of idea that you held about it, and to, say, be born again out of that. of to be born anew, I could better say. It's like you are born again new. You get a whole new vision given to you because you let go of that way. But see, there's not a ways I do this and this and this and you'll be fine. Like, no, this is like you enter into the process in your own way. You read the lesson 10 times a day, or some read the lessons maybe 2 times a day, or who knows what. Like, that is so individual, but really good to take a look at today. It's like, it is still totally individual, so you cannot really speak of a method at all. Otherwise it would be something by your doing. And one thing for sure is that even though you do the exercises are being done for the undoing of what you thought you were. And that's the same here. It's like I see great analogies here. Like there's absolutely the same story. So the conscious contact with God is coming from God. You open. Suddenly there's space in your consciousness, and what happens? It comes to you. Suddenly you experience grace. Just, that's a surprise to you. I can tell you that. It's like it's a surprise. It's given to you. It is not that you get it by doing the right thing. So there's no method. So that's essential because somebody asked for it. It's like, well, I missed a bit that that I have no role in this. Like I'm not doing that, or even my good intentions and all this are not helping. It's like, no, this is the part where you actually just put faith in the alternative, but you're not going to do it in the end. It's going to be given to you. And why not? How lovely is that? Everything is given to you. So why not this too? The fourth way, well, there are 3 ways first. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's like there are 3 ways here, the way of the fakir, the way of the monk, and the way of the yogi, that he, uses. Man can acquire immortality. All existing and generally known ways to immortality can be divided into 3 categories. The way of the fakir. So I made a short description of it. The way of the fakir is the way of struggle with the physical body, the way of work on the first room. This is a long, difficult and uncertain way. The fakir strives to develop physical will, power over the body. So then we go to the way of the monk. Second is the way of the monk. This is the way of faith, the way of religious feeling, religious sacrifice. Only a mind with very strong religious emotions and a very strong religious imagination can become a monk in the true sense of the word. The way of the monk is also very long and hard. The third way is the way of the yogi. This is the way of knowledge, the way of mind. The way of the yogi consists in working on the 3rd room and in striving to enter the 4th room by means of knowledge. The yogi reaches the 4th room by developing his mind, but his body and emotions remain undeveloped and, like the fakir and the monk, he is unable to make use of the results of his attainment. He knows everything but can do nothing. So in order to grasp the essence of this teaching, it is necessary clearly to understand the idea that the ways are the only possible methods for the development of man's hidden possibilities. This in turn shows how difficult and rare such development is. The development of these possibilities is not a law. The law for man is existence in the circle of mechanical influences, the state of man-machine. The way of the development of hidden possibilities is a way against nature, against God. How to become a Christian? First of all, It is necessary to understand that a Christian is not a man who calls himself a Christian or whom others call a Christian. A Christian is one who lives in accordance with Christ's precepts, such as we cannot be Christians. Such as we are, we cannot be Christians. In order to be Christians, we must be able to do. We cannot do. With us, everything happens. Christ says, love your enemies. But how can we love our enemies when we cannot even love our friends? Sometimes it loves and sometimes it does not love. So here are just some, say, aspects of the teaching in the fourth way, or in search for the miraculous. And I put this together, like these were the three ways, and there's the fourth way too. So the fourth way is, you could say, the miraculous way. That's the way of awakening, of not a logical or a conventional way. It is a way of sudden changes. Now you can say it like as miraculous way. And so that was, in fact, the way that Gurdjieff was teaching. And we've heard about that now, like a little bit, just to get into it. Now, why does he say like a Christian? How can you become a Christian? Well, if you say that you're a Christian, you're following the teachings of the Christ, or the revelations of the Christ, in fact. Like you recognize yourself as that. And this recognition is important. So what he actually said in the book is more like this. It's like, well, you tell yourself you're a Christian. Like you go to church on Sunday, for instance. You go to church on Sunday, but are you really a Christian? Like, are you actually believing and practicing? Are you able to do? Are you able to get out of the human enclosure with ideas in order to come to creative action, to be a co-creator with God? Are you able to do that? Then you can call yourself a Christian, like what we call in the Course in Miracles, like then you become a teacher of God. Everyone is a teacher of God if you choose to be one. Like, if you choose to be one, and also allow yourself to have experiences not of your doing, or not of your making, not related to the identity that you thought you were. So that was another part in it. That's why I put it in there. It's like the reason for that. Not that we have to call ourselves Christians. No. The whole, in fact, everything that I've shared so far is to see how unusual, in fact, an awakening procedure or process is. And here maybe you have seen an image being sketched, that it's difficult and hard and all this. And you can say like, well, it is the last thing that you're going to do. So you can do your yogi way, your monk way, your fakir way. You can choose for that. And you can control everything. That's wonderful. But it's not what we're talking about. It is still a distraction. It might be part of your process, who knows? But it's still like not coming to the fourth way. It's not coming to the miraculous part in the whole story. That not necessarily have to take long, but is given to you in your willingness to allow a change to occur, in your openness to hear and to stay awake, like not to fall back into sleep and behaving as an meditating yogi, just meditating for the meditating. Like, well, probably after a couple of years I will have an experience. Like, if that is not your way in the fourth way, that is not what is asked of you. So now this asks of you like a deep, you can say like commitment, a deep commitment, a deep like deep determination to do this, and perseverance to continue with it, to whatever the situation is, coming back to the essence of it. It's like, wait a minute, none of this is so. Wait a minute. I have to read something, or I have to do something. Like something can come to me now. I'm open to be inspired, to stand still and be right here, to have my moment in this moment, and let the whole world fall apart in that sense. Because what I'm looking for is beyond the ways of the world. So that is what was given as an overview, as an introduction to the teaching of Gurdjieff. And yeah, like I said, I've found it to be very inspiring to prepare this and to get into the expressions. That's really lovely. And of course the music was really lovely too. He comes to creative expression. Now we're familiar with that. Like, he's a creative miracle man, you could say. Like, yeah, we know those guys. I recognize some of you to be that. How great is that? So you come to self-expression, and wherever you are, you pick something up, and you suddenly have inspiration to express yourself in a certain way. In music, in dance, in whatever way comes to you, you start to express yourself. Here you have it. And expressing that is literally connecting with it, seeing that you have a connection with every part of it, because God is everywhere. God is in communication with every aspect of creation. And you exemplify that by picking up an inspiration, one line, or one rhythm, or one thing that comes to you and starts to sing in you and express itself through you. Well, a demonstration of that is what I love to share with you. That's a poem that came to me with the music. Now, this music is also based on the Gurdjieff music. It is a dance, and so I'll read it to you. Real life, inspired by the work of Gurdjieff. Life is real only then, when I am. Did I accomplish what I thought was impossible? This cannot be. Something here is not right. Not completely atropified is conscious actualization. Conscious labor and intentional suffering, I wish and will be. Moreover, my being is necessary. Universal Analogy. God is here. He is everywhere. I am created in His image. My real life is here. The entire sensing of the whole of oneself. Say conscious, I am, and you are real. Say conscious, I can, and you really can. Impulses sacred to man. Say consciously, I wish. I have no need of nothing. I have no desire. I wish because I can. I am. Feel reverberation in the solar plexus. Repeat frequent. Life is only real then when I am. All right. So thank you. Thank you for, listening to this, being part of it, being present here. That's really lovely. Thank you so much for that. And so this was just a short introduction to the work of Gurdjieff, and in fact, giving it a place within our own setup, you could say, like including it in as far as we can do that. So that's great. And also, like, it's lovely to see the inspiration that takes place when you are, say, coming in touch with a different master that talks totally different language, in fact, but still has many things that you will recognize. All right, so thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you soon, maybe on Wednesday with the Rumi meeting, and Thursday with the Hafiz meeting. So we dive into the Persian realm, you could say, next door to Armenia, and from a totally different time. So thank you so much, and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.